Hello, welcome to Archetype once again with your lovely host, me, Ashley. We're here with Lenovo as well, continuing our cool little archetype character. So if you didn't join in the last two, I'm gonna lose track of how many I do. We were starting on this Joker slash type trickster character, doing a little fox alchemy dude. And if you guys were here last week, I took this guy a little farther just on my own free downtime. Just because, one, as an artist, I can't help myself. But two, it's also nice to be able to kind of get a little farther with a block in. But I have to keep detailing and keep adding some more fun stuff for you guys along the way. So, yeah, say hi in the chat so I know people are watching and I'm not just sitting here in a room talking to myself. That'd be great. And we will get started. So I think I'm going to probably start off with the goggles, which is what we have. Hola, hello. Oh, I like the little hi. Cute. Hello, everybody. Yeah, so I really want to get these goggles on because goggles equals cool character. So if you don't have a character and you're like, man, I just need my guy to look really cool, secret is just to add goggles. At least that's what I've been told. Just kidding. Only have goggles for reasons. And we do have a pretty good reason. I mean, he does play around with a lot of chemicals and potions and things and wouldn't want to get that in his eye, which is why I also gave him a little bandage. He's got like a little burn, maybe he's got like a little burn mark or something. Because he's playing with chemicals too much. Chat says that he looks a little goofier with bigger ears, and I do agree. Most characters with large ears, I guess it could be a bit of a archetype or maybe a stereotype of, big goofy ears kind of leads to something a little bit more friendly. Someone who's probably not going to try to hurt you or do anything like that. But he still could be, if he's a bit of a goofball and he's just too happy to be, too gung-ho happy about making chemicals and things like that, then it is possible that maybe that's one of his character flaws, is he is a bit too goofy and a bit too reckless. I'm just getting some geometry going for our little goggles here. I was in ZBrush all day, and now all of a sudden I'm just like, I can't read, can't do anything. That's okay, though. But yeah, when I'm blocking out stuff, I like to stay really, really super low with all these things. We still don't have a name for our character. For all the people that are super punny out there, definitely start coming up with some names. I'm a big fan of puns. I'm a big fan of dad jokes. So toss them my way. Now, for one thing that I do want to do is I want to make sure that his goggles actually fit onto his eyes before putting them onto his head. That would make the most sense, at least to me. Right? Because I think a lot of people maybe would tend to... I'm actually just going to do one side for now. I think some people would tend to just add like goggles on top of his head, and then when they try to actually put it down and make it fit, maybe it won't. He's got pretty small little eye sockets. And it could be cool. I'm thinking maybe since we're kind of going a bit steampunky or something like that. Ooh, that's why it's doing that. We could maybe add some cool like leather padding or something like that that goes around the edge. We can figure something out. That's fun. I accidentally made really terrible geometry. Boop, boop, there we go. So again, just starting super, super simple. I don't really care about like what the geometry super looks like right now. I'm just trying to get something that I can start playing with. So I'll start extending. And some people think I'm crazy for wanting to use the Z modeler for this, but I really like using the Z modeler. I think it's got very simple commands, but makes it a lot easier to just kind of keep things simple when you're starting out. So I'm trying to figure out how far back these little goggles would have to go. For those of you that are just joining us, I don't know if anybody's new, but we're referencing, I'll bring up the reference for you guys. So we're referencing this drawing. And I did gather a bunch of other reference and stuff that I thought would be cool for a character. We were going to give him some sort of form of backpack, but with his hood in the way, I'm kind of wondering if it should be something maybe on the side. Maybe you guys can figure that out as to where I'm thinking he's going to have this little to-go pack of like how he makes his chemicals and things like that. So this little like kind of pressure cooker type looking thing. And I like all the little gizmos and the little copper material breakups and stuff on it. I think it's really cool. So I think it'd be fun to try to figure out how we can make basically his own little to-go workshop that he carries with him. And then in his little pouches, he carries all the ingredients and stuff that he needs. So I think something like that could be kind of cool. And then I also like the idea of giving maybe him a big like worker glove or something like that. I thought that was interesting. I like all the breakup on this kind of apron that we have going on here. So I think for maybe even in his pants and his little apron shirt thing, we can kind of play around with some shapes and whatnot and see what we can come up with. And then also, we had these little alchemy symbols before. So I'm actually taking I'm looking at a lot of these symbols and I'm kind of placing them in a lot of different areas on his costume or on his outfit. So, you don't want to do maybe all of them, but I think it would be good to maybe pick a few that you like. Or ones that you think can kind of like meld well together. So, for example, he's got an eye patch right now. His little cloak clasp has, the symbol for salt on it, and then these two are planets. So one's Mars and then one is Saturn. But it makes like a cool little hook. So you can add kind of like weird little shape language things like that into your character. And again, because one circle was salt, I figured anything else that's on his belts or little clasps and things are also going to be like that same symbol. So just picking out things like that can kind of continue to kind of hit home the point that we're trying to make, that he's an alchemist and things like that. A question from Twitch, right? Yeah, Twitch. With small character details like bird marks, are there any rules on how much is enough? Seems like you add small details and touches forever. You totally can. You can kind of keep adding as many details as you want, but at a certain point, it kind of becomes redundant. And I think a lot of it has to do with, can something that you add to a character tell you more about the character? And if the answer is no, or maybe it's something that you've already stated in something, then maybe there's no need to add any more. For example, a burn mark or like some damage. And I think adding a glove onto this hand would be interesting, right? Because maybe he's trying to hide something, or now he's learned his lesson and now he wears protective glove. So it's things like that that are leading to where this character has come from, and not just adding detail for the sake of adding detail. Because you can kind of get carried away with adding too much, which is why I say we have a bunch of alchemy symbols, but at the same time, you don't want to do all of them, because that's going to be way too many for the sake of like who our character is and what our character is. fitting. Okay. Try to see if I want to do, because we can also try to play with a shape that's way bigger than his whole eye. So that might be interesting. And it kind of class over. So it kind of does something like, come here, little Bert. That. So I'm just trying to get like an outer shape for something. Because really, I actually don't need the inside of this. That's just kind of like a guide. I really just kind of want to see how they're framing, right? Dracula. Ooh, Dracula's joining us. I just watched Castlevania, so I'm loving it. Dracula is asking what material did I use for eyes. So I used it's called toy plastic. So it leaves this really shiny little. It makes everything feel super wet. So it's a really great one to use for eyes. And then the rest of it I just poly painted. So it's just a poly paint of pupils and things like that. But getting that little shine is a nice way to start making them feel like eyes. As an artist, I'm a big fan of just making stuff feel right. You know, it sounds very artsy when you say it like that, but you know, that's why I like to add, you know, color and stuff as soon as possible to get an idea of the character. And you know, if you have a little highlight or a little shine on a character, it'll make stuff kind of pop, or he'll come to life a little bit. So even if I don't use that material, sometimes I'll actually use poly paint and just paint a white highlight. So that way I can see, you know, a more realistic feeling eye, or something that feels like it's alive. Go ahead and split this, because we really just need something that I like trying to work very thinly. So usually I work with like one-sided geometry for as long as possible. What's also nice about that is here in ZBrush, if you do dynamic thickness, you can actually go into dynamic subdivision. You can create dynamic thickness on something. So I can actually make thickness that doesn't exist, which is really cool. So you can see that I can now have something that looks like it's got thickness as much as I want and adjust this. But in reality, I'm actually just adjusting, you know, 4 squares. It's very handy and helpful, because it allows for editability and for quick adjustments and changes when I want them. And it says, love the shapes, looks great. Thank you, appreciate it. We are working towards stuff. I did go in and sculpt like a bunch of fur and stuff off stream. Now, normally how I would tackle fur is probably actually creating it the way I did for his face, which would be creating like individual pieces of geo like this. But it's very time consuming. So for the sake of our character and whatnot, sculpting the back and sculpting the tail and stuff like this, I think is totally fine. And for our purposes, totally works. And I'm just trying to keep it within the style of what I was starting before. But again, it all depends. You know, if it was going to be a game asset, then you're going to be using hair cards and things like that. Or it might be just all hand sculpted like this anyway, and you'd bake it down. So it really just kind of depends on the project and like what you're doing for it. But in our case, because this will probably just be something that I'm going to sculpt and then render in either, you know, maybe probably Blender. I like rendering stuff out in Blender. Blender's super friendly, and it's also nice to show for everybody what Blender is watching the stream, because it's free. So if you're watching and you're just kind of a enthusiast of art and you're not into doing 3D stuff, Blender is a great option for you. Because it actually, again, is free and it knows how to do everything. So if you want to learn how to sculpt, it has a sculpting tool. If you want to learn how to 3D model, it's got a cool 3D modeling tool. It can rig, it can animate, it can even composite, which is insane. So yeah, it can do a bunch of really, really cool stuff. So if you want to dabble into anything at all in 3D, or even if you are a 3D artist, but you're like, hey, I've never animated, Blender's got it, and you can do it in there. And it's a great way to just kind of explore as an artist, because a lot of software can be kind of expensive now and kind of hard to like break into if you're not, already in it. I think I might try to, still trying to figure out what kind of shape I want to go for. And again, this is probably where, if you have some decent reference, could help you. But I think I like the idea of having the edges be really thick, that go and wrap around his eye. Hey, someone's just got here and said, what are we doing today? Today we are continuing our archetype sculpt. We did a drawing the first week, and then we started blocking it out last week. Crazy to think that I think it's only been 2 times that I've done this. And this third time around, we are now continuing to detail and make some more assets for a character. And then my assumption for how quickly this will go is we'll probably finish that today, and then next week will be getting our character into a cool pose and then rendering it out and making a nice final image for it. At least that's my plan. So we will see. If you guys ask a bunch of questions, which I want you to do, we'll see how fast I can go. No promises. For hard surfacing in ZBrush, I use polygrouping and creasing a lot, and I think it's super, super handy. Because again, I'm working with something super low res that I can move around a lot, but also kind of see what it's going to look like as a final, so I can start making other interesting choices and things. And it just leads for more editability for longer. A lot of the stuff that I do professionally and on my free time, a lot of it I try to have no subdivisions for as long as possible on tons of different assets. I mean, even most of these don't have subdivisions. This hood actually doesn't even have thickness yet. It's just, again, pretending to have thickness. Because if I need to adjust it or make something or make changes to it, it's very easily editable and able to make changes to it. The moment you start sculpting on stuff, it becomes a little more difficult for that. So. Did anybody come up with a cool name yet? I don't have a name. I'm terrible at names. I like to try to research something that makes sense. So these are little trickster alchemy clocks. Story told is that his fur's green because he played around too much with his chemicals and potions and things. So all the other foxes in this world are not green. He's a rare case that makes our character kind of more interesting and gives him a little bit more backstory and whatnot to his alchemy. I mean, maybe he's not very good at alchemy, right? We can think about that too. But maybe he's actually quite terrible at it. But he wants to be better. He wants to be good at it. A character that's got some sort of flaw is always more interesting than your character that does everything right, or your character that, is always heroic and always makes the right choices. It's far more interesting to have a character that is just like a person. We're not perfect all the time. We make mistakes all the time. And so, again, giving that relatability to your characters is super important. When you're thinking about like the story of your character and where your character comes from, how far along in the process is he of learning alchemy? You know, is he super good at it? Is he really seasoned? Is he, you know, an apprentice who maybe he's a little too cocky? You know, he thinks he's better than he is, and so that leads him to have some mistakes. We have a question from Twitch. It said it's not really relating to sculpting or CG directly. You have a meeting with Ghost of VFX regarding a potential internship in a few days, and I really want to make an impression. Any advice? Ooh, interviewing. Interviewing is interesting. I think the biggest thing, I mean, I think making an impression, at least in my experience, and I know this maybe isn't going to answer your question, but as far as my portfolio reviews have gone and doing interviews, it's all about your work that you have to show. So for me, it's really important to have like a good, strong portfolio. And that doesn't mean to have everything be super perfect or doesn't mean having like the best portfolio, because there's kind of no such thing as that, because art's a journey, so we're always learning and we're always trying to improve. And so because of that, I think the biggest thing that I look for in portfolio stuff is your ability and willingness to learn more, and that you're hungry to learn more. I think it's super important to studios and companies. If you walk in acting like you know everything, that doesn't really read super well to studios, especially as an artist, because you're going to be, you know, working with a lot of people. Especially as an internship, you're going to be learning tons of stuff as well. Oh no, it didn't. So I do think a lot of that is super important, is coming in with the attitude that you're willing to learn and that you're ready to learn, because that's what you're there to do. At least that's what you should be there to do. So when I interned at Legacy, they really liked me because, one, I had a bunch of creature work, so I was gearing myself towards the work that they were already doing, which is super important. And then, don't delete it, I just made it up. And then on top of that, I came in super hungry for like knowledge and wanting to learn more. And they could definitely feel that and see that in my work and what I was inspired by and what I was interested in. And the fact that I did my research, you know, and a lot of doing your research for the studio, but also just being knowledgeable in our industry alone, you know. I'm in games, but in reality, I think I'm actually more of an art nerd. So when I talk about stuff, I actually know a lot more about the art side of stuff, or, you know, your favorite artists, or, you know, finding things like that I think are super important. So yeah, just staying knowledgeable in like what you want to be and what you want to get out of your industry is really important. But yeah, your portfolio speaks a lot about, you know, what you're going to bring to the internship and things like that. I hope that answers that question. It's kind of a hard question because it's also going to vary so much from studio to studio. But for me, also, my portfolio is super diverse, and a lot of studios like that too. Because I can draw, I can do 3D, I can do realistic, I can do stylized, and, you know, there's a lot of people that go back and forth on whether or not you should have that much variation in your work. But a lot of what I do for a living is, you know, I love to do art. So my portfolio is filled with stuff that I enjoy doing because that's what I want to get hired to do. So I like stylized, but I also like realistic. And so, you know, I like to play onto both of those things, you know. And in the end, it'll just make you a more diverse artist and a more valuable artist. One of the reasons why I got hired at the studio that I'm at now is because I can do 3D, but I can also draw. So now I get to have fun creating concepts and stuff that I normally maybe wouldn't have gotten to do if I didn't show that I could do it. So that's my advice for those things. Since back, hello, happy Tuesday. Oh boy. He's gonna be our just like my favorite little viewer because he asks so many questions, or they ask so many questions. I don't know. Synth, you're not even human. Dracula asked, how do I add the fake smooth? It's the dynamic smoothing. So if I extrude this out, so when I smooth, I'm just hitting D. So you can see dynamic turned on here. It's actually also down in dynamic subdiv. So if you turn on dynamic, it's pretending like as if it has 2 subdivision levels. You can change this as much as you want. So you can go up to 4, or you can go down to nothing. 2 is usually pretty good. And then I'm getting those nice sharp edges by using creasing. So you can go to crease and you can say crease polygroups, and that'll crease stuff for you. And if you crease it, if you polygroup your stuff by normals and then you crease it, we're getting real technical, then it'll crease like anything that has, a polygroup. And so that's how I kind of like hard surface model stuff, while keeping it super, super low and having no subdivisions, which is always really, really handy. I'm just making some padding for the back of these goggles. And you're welcome. I hope that was a good answer. I'm sorry that was a long-winded answer, Mario Watts from the Twitch streaming. But portfolio review and portfolios in general are hard, and trying to break into this industry can be really confusing at first, because when you talk to people, you're going to talk to a bunch of people and ask that same question, and you're going to get a different answer every single time, just because everyone gets into this industry differently. One of my favorite animal character designers, his name is David Coleman. He started by being in the mail room at Disney, and someone just happened to see his sketches, and now he's, directing storyboarding and doing all sorts of really awesome stuff. Yeah, years and years later. And he's a super nice guy. And so, it's really interesting to see where people come from. You'll hear stories like that, but then you'll also get people now like me who go to Gnomon. So, Gnomon was a really big help, obviously, for me to learn the skills that I needed and the tools that I needed to get into this industry. So it really just varies and depends so much on the person and where they came from and like what they were looking for. But I feel like as long as you're, doing what you want to be doing, you're gonna find a good direction in this business. As long as you just keep it doing what you like to do. At least that's what I believe. But getting some goggles. Yeah. Again, you can do a lot of cool smoothing with dynamic subdiv. So for these goggles, I wanted to see a bit more smoothing around the edges. So you can set a crease level, which is increased. This is my little thing. But you can set a crease level to 2, which means it'll keep the crease 2 subdivisions. And then on the 3rd subdivide, it'll act like there is nothing. So it'll smooth it out a bit. So to get that setting, I have the crease level 2 and a smooth subdiv of 3. And so it gives me like a really nice preview of what I'm trying to go for my little goggles here. Synth is asking if I did more work offline, and I did. I'm sorry, you didn't get to see all the process, but it is a lot. So I did add, I made the hood a little bit more like an actual hood. We just kind of had like a placeholder before. I had some buckles and things. A lot of it's nothing too crazy. A lot of it was just adjusting some small anatomy, sculpting in the hands a little bit better, adding the fur on the tail. Things that honestly I felt like for the stream weren't overly exciting, but maybe me making these goggles might not be overly exciting. But I think it's more fun to watch something like that. But a lot of this stuff too is I don't know, it can feel kind of repetitive. a little bit. So, you know, if you watch me make goggles, I'm not sure how much you want to watch me make, I don't know, something that's very similar to goggles. So it just kind of depends. But I also was just having a lot of fun with this character. I was like, yeah, I want to sculpt some more, you know. So I did sculpt a little bit more. I'll make sure I duplicated this. I did. Cool. So yeah, because there was kind of a lot to get through today, and as I chat with you guys and whatnot, I can get distracted very easily, which is okay. But I'm now going to make the little glass part. And for me, I'm going to, you can just close holes and then you'll get like a gross triangular mesh, but I want something that I can bend a little bit better, so I'm going to bridge. Question from Twitch, am I going to add the barrel and other details still, or is that just for reference? I don't know if I want exactly a barrel, like what our reference has. To be honest, partly I drew the barrel because I was like, barrel, kind of lazy. But I was thinking of something that can like hold liquid well, and maybe it's like some sort of aging type thing. But I also found this reference, which is way more interesting than a barrel. I'm just not sure if it's going to be a backpack because now we have his hood, and practically, I'm not sure how practical it is for it to be on his back, or maybe it's something cool on the side of him, like he kind of carries. Like maybe he carries it on the side. Maybe we can still have this bandolier that goes maybe underneath his hood instead of over it. So there's a lot of stuff like that that, again, in a drawing, I can get away with this because I'm not worried about what the hood is. But in 3D, we have something that, you know, he has to wear, or there's going to be reasons why that kind of, you know, might be blocking his movement or might be blocking other things that we kind of have to rethink. So it's not that we're not adding it, but it's more about the idea of it something being there than doing exactly what the drawing says. And that's also a good point to add is that, you know, it is my concept, so I can change it the way I want to. But even when you're working in the industry and doing this type of stuff, as a 3D artist, it is my job to make sure that, you know, the concept reads from I'm going to get rid of one edge because it's easier to do that. The concept reads from 3D in all angles, and you can start to kind of like make sense of it. Because again, in 2D, there's a lot of stuff that we can kind of cheat that we don't have to think about, like the back of the hood and the backpack and things like that. So, you know, our job as artists is to try to stay holding true to the idea of the concept, but making sense of it and changing things if we need to. You know, and I do that all the time for my job. If something doesn't make sense in the concept, I'll, you know, message the concept artist and go, hey, what do you think about maybe this idea? Like, I think this will work better, or the rig won't really allow for this type of stretching, or there's always going to be some sort of technical problem that you're going to run into. You know, that you have to kind of be prepared for and be willing to like make changes, but not just on the fly. I mean, it's something that you have to have conversations with a lot of people about, you know, and being like, can we get away with this, or can we do this? For example, actually a pretty decent example of this is when I worked on Mandalorian, we had to revamp Boba Fett's outfit. Spoiler, if you guys haven't watched it, because Boba Fett's in it. But we had to revamp his whole costume and yet keep it the same. But the issue with the original Boba Fett is that his helmet is ginormous. It's huge. Like, it's way too big. And so for the purposes of kind of modernizing it and making it feel right, we had to make a lot of adjustments to it without making it feel like we changed it. Because, you know, fans love Boba Fett. and it still needs to be recognizable and still needs to fit what Boba Fett looks like. But we need to make changes so that way it was an easier suit to wear, right, for our actors and things like that. So there's things like that that you'll run into all the time, where in concept it's a great idea, but in practicality it might not be. And so, yeah, you run into that type of problem solving all the time. Oh. Cool. Now that I have all that, I'm not sure why, talking to you guys, I'd probably just merge this for no real good reason. What I'm actually going to do is, now that we have it fitting on his eyeballs, kind of like the way I want them to, then we can move. Now we can move him up onto his head, because I don't want to keep his goggles on. It's fine, but I want to see his eyes. I just can't really feel the character much through goggles that I can't see through. If it was in, if we were to take this and render it into Blender, and then we actually have glass so we could still see his eyes, that'd be nice. But transparency in ZBrush is a little annoying, so we're going to go ahead and move these up on top of his head. So you can do one or two things. You can merge it down, which I wouldn't mind doing, but we can also just select. Ooh, this is going to be the more annoying one, actually. But you can select things by holding Control-Shift and having this little checklist on, and you can actually Control-Shift and select what you want and move it all at once, even though they're separate. But ZBrush is a little weird. Sometimes it picks to select all things or no things. So in this case, I just think it's easier because I have no subdivisions. I'm just going to merge it down. Merge down. Cool. So now we have that, and then I need to find where his little centerpiece is. So yeah, again, I like to make sure that whatever we're making actually fits on his face, and then we can kind of warp and adjust and change stuff a little bit to fit onto his head, because that's how he would actually be removing and taking off his glasses, right? So I don't know, maybe I'm the dumb one, but when I first started, I would kind of do something where, like, yeah, I'm going to put the goggles on, and I would model them up here, and then when I would try to put them on my character's head, I was like, oh, this like doesn't fit. So, just be smarter than me, I guess, when it comes to this stuff. So I'm going to mask this and only leave this thing, so that way I can basically bend it, because that's the part that would bend. So now I can kind of bend it this way. Just, whoops. Just down. So yeah, I'm just adjusting. I'm moving the part that's basically in the middle and trying to find a place that makes sense on his head where he could wear it. And this part's leather, so I can actually puff that up and I can adjust it a little bit, just to make sure that it fits properly. So this stuff I'm not worried about, because I can make it feel like it's squishing, which I don't mind, because that's the part that can squish. But the part that can't squish is the metal part, right? So I want to make sure that that stuff isn't, intersecting or doing something weird on his head. So something like that, I think, would be okay. So you can see, like, it's a very different shape from what maybe someone would have normally just been like, oh, I'll put like some circle goggles on his face. But then in reality, he can't fit into those. So yeah, just again, trying to make it. And I think we ended up with goggles that have probably a more interesting shape, because they're more, because they actually fit our character, right? So now I can move this stuff back. And if I wanted to, I could have it wrap around the ears and do something, but maybe it does something more interesting because he does have such big ears and a lot of fur. Again, there are some stuff in 3D that you can still just cheat, which is, this is one of them. I don't have to pretend like I know where this attaches. You can come up with something, but for the sake of our character, I'm like, yeah, I'm happy with that. I think we finally decided. I mean, it's been going on for 3 weeks that whether he's a good or bad guy. But I think someone mentioned in the chat earlier that he's got big goofy ears, so I think he's actually more of a good guy. And I think as we were kind of chatting about that, I think it is interesting, or maybe more interesting, that he is a bit of a beginner, or he's a little cockier than he should be because he's actually not that good at alchemy, which is why we gave him, the burn marks and stuff like that, or we will be giving him burn marks and bandages. Cool. And now I can play with squishing his leather. I'm using just the move topological because this is all merged down, but now I'm just trying to move the leather around to make it feel like it's getting squished, or that it can move around a bit. That makes sense to me. Cool. Yay, goggles. And save. You never know. You never know when ZBrush wants to crash on you. Although I will say ZBrush's quick save now is very good. I don't have to worry about that usually. Synth is asking, oh, cheers from Montana. Cheers. Synth is asking for these archetype characters, will the final result be a concept / design, fully fleshed out and painted, or will I make it into a production asset? I don't think we have time in the episodes to go through a full production asset. If that becomes super wanted, then technically we could. I mean, we can do whatever we want. It's our show. But no, the point of this is to get through characters. So it's really to talk about more about character design and concept than it is a full final, because trust me, I don't think you'd want to sit through see, I got distracted. I'm like, oh, muscles. You wouldn't want to sit through probably a production asset type thing, because it can be very technical and it's kind of boring to stream. And there's also plenty of YouTube videos and things to walk you through all sorts of cool technical stuff. This stream is more about trying to be creative with our characters by starting out with, some sort of fun archetype, and then growing upon that and expanding upon that and seeing what we come up with. So yeah, I doubt that it's going to be something about going full production. So I'm going to go ahead and give him his glove. So I just duplicated him. Again, I'm a huge fan of working smarter, not harder. So I'm already grabbing stuff that I have. Oops. Part of me wants fingerless gloves, but that's not very protective, is it? Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if they're fingerless. Maybe one side could be fingerless because it's just a cool glove, and then the other side can be like a working glove. Asymmetry is always really something cool to play with. So for now, we'll grab both, and we can see what we can come up with. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off symmetry. I'm gonna split one. So one, you can't tell because they're colored, but we'll make it, for now we'll make it red. This other one we'll make also red. So this side, I'm gonna go ahead and give them fingerless gloves because look how easy it is. Boom. And if I wanted to, I can go down to deformation, and I can just inflate this if I wanted to. To give them an idea of gloves, we can maybe make it the same color as that for now. And then the other glove, maybe it will be red. We're going to inflate this even more. And he's got claws, so we're going to have to move. They're going to be pretty bulky little gloves. I don't know how animals with claws would wear big fat gloves. Could be a glove that used to be full, but his claws tore them apart. Ooh, that's a good idea. Yeah, so for the fingerless gloves, maybe it is something that he himself had to cut because he can't find gloves that can fit his poor little claw paw, right? So that's an excellent idea. Are you going to behave? Let's see if it does it. Yes, that's what I want. I want some other color. There we go. So now I want to give them, because of my reference, I have this glove that has like a really cool big, it's got like a big gauntlet type protective wear, which I think also is a more interesting silhouette breakup. So we've got, one side that's kind of maybe more like a tight fitted glove. And then the other side's more of like a worker glove where he can grab, I don't know, hot vials of potions and things. You could argue it doesn't make sense that he only has one, but whatever, it's design. We're gonna go with it. We're gonna see how it feels. Maybe I can take this glove, duplicate it. I can run a sim on it, and then I can put it like in his back pocket or something. So then he does have two, but he only maybe puts one on every now and then, right? If you really want to make sense of it, you can. Since is saying that his torn glove became a real big hit on the fashion market, and right, you would be, because that's how it goes. Ripped jeans, right? Are they coming back in style? I hope not. It's too cold for ripped jeans right now. I don't want to do that. That's how he gets all his money for his little potions and things. He sells his cut designer glove. Sorry, I'm also reading chat because so many people ask questions, which I'm very happy for. Dracula's asking if I have a limit of polygons in my work. No, you technically don't. I just prefer to work as low. Oops, I'm uploading a video accidentally. There we go. I just prefer to work as low as I can for as long as I can because, again, in the industry, it always comes down to deadlines and stuff. Like, what can you complete in the time that you have? So that's always going to be, you're kind of always racing against the clock. And then also on top of that, a lot of it is, we're working on my concept right now, so I can make it whatever I want. But in reality, you're doing somebody else's vision, which means that there's going to be tons of changes most of the time. So my work, I prefer to work in a way that allows me to change and make quick edits of things. So that's kind of why I work the way I work, is because it allows me the most editability for as long as possible. That's always my goal. Whoa, that's so thick. It's kind of adding thickness the way I don't want it to. So I'm just not going to do it that way. Oh god, thickness, go to 0. Don't want to deal with you. And again, because I usually work so low, it's really easy for me to, I can add thickness now, and if I wanted to, I could always delete it later. But just seeing how the top of the glove feels with some thickness, I crease it. Twitch is saying it's cool how I use and recreate from assets already made, and is that a big part or a basic part of 3D sculpting? I would hope so, but this is just, my own method of working. So a lot of it too is just kind of what I find easier. A lot of the time I do stuff like that, even if it seems more like a pain in the butt, because I don't like all the buttons. I don't like all the technicality. At the end of the day, I'm a character artist, so I want to be focusing on, making the character. And if I make that process too technical, you can get very, very easily lost in that process, and kind of not focus on the things that are more important. So for me, yeah, if I already have geometry that makes sense to make and turn into a glove, I'm just going to turn that into a glove. Because for me, it allows me to just stay on point and stay on track with making the character and not having to worry about, all the technical stuff of like, oh, now I have to model a glove. It's just about kind of being smart and efficient with the assets that you already have. I don't know if this glove should be red. I do like the fact that in my reference here, say they're orange, so it's kind of cool if there's like a bright color. I just don't know if I want to do orange. I'm trying to think of what color might be kind of a cooler color. Again, most of him is he's green, so we can stick with maybe some cooler colors, like maybe it could be a blue, which is also kind of a nice contrast to the red. Maybe it can be like a darker desaturated blue. Something like that. I don't know yet. I'm going to go ahead and make his little potion vials now. And you can see at the bottom, I actually forgot. I almost started it, you guys. And then I was like, no, save it for the audience. But I made a spear and just deleted some of the top. So now I'm just going to continue working on that. And I'm just going to make one, and then I can create and make an insert mesh of it, and I can just make a bunch of them and kind of place them where I want to, which will be the easiest way to go about creating a cool little vial. A part of me is sad because I can't show glass in here. As far as like, showing that there's liquid inside. And that's just because ZBrush kind of sucks at transparencies. But what you can do is you can technically flip it. So you can flip the normals so I can see inside of it. So for display's sake, I could display it like this. And then on the inside, I'm going to duplicate this. Delete hidden. I'm going to flip it. There's methods to my madness, you guys. A weird little thing going on right there that I'm going to fix. So if I want to create like liquid inside of it, you can kind of display it maybe like this. Purple. Give me purple. Boom. Just for now, so it looks like it's transparent, because I think it's kind of cool to want to see, what's inside the bottle. It might look a little strange, but as long as you know what it is, I guess it's fine. I'm going to go ahead and crease this, and then we can do I want to do this? Well, we could use booleans. Booleans might be the better way to do it. Because you want this to look like as if it's sitting properly inside the sphere, right? So you want the liquid to be all correct. So you could use booleans. For now, I can just leave it like that, as if it's, you know, just sitting nicely. But the moment you rotate it, it'd be kind of cool to rotate the liquid within it. But we can do that later because it kind of matters on positioning. So we could kind of just leave it like that for now. And then again, I'm a big fan of reusing what I already have. So I'm going to duplicate this, flip it, solo. I'm going to take the inside of this. Again, I kind of just like it when stuff fits as well. Like I know that this will fit. Cork it. Now we got a little corked vial, right? Then we can do another one. So I just duplicated it. I'm going to flip it. It's a circle, so it stands to reason that this should fit the same way. If I take that, delete hidden, extrude that. Okay, there we go. Making sure I'm filling the color properly. Cool. Again, just really quickly getting a little thing that's going to hold it, like a little leather pouch thing. Something that he can hook onto, basically like his belt or something like that. Is kind of what I'm going for here. Something like that. At least that's what kind of my reference that I have. Oh, it didn't move my reference properly. There we go. Something like that, right? So we're kind of trying to create something like this that we can then attach onto his little belt. Now that I have that, I could also go in and there's a ton of stuff in ZBrush that kind of already exists that looks cool. So I mean, we could grab like a little flathead or something. I don't know if that really makes much sense. I think it'd be more interesting to add just like a simple stud though. Let's see. This one's kind of interesting. Or that button, little snap button. Yeah, going. Since it's saying he's always wondered why it's never had opacity. It's not really a renderer. I mean, that's definitely part of the reason. It's just never really been that kind of program. There is transparency. You can render opacity, but you have to actually do like a BPR render. So it's not something that can just stay transparent, which is why I do this dumb little like flipped inverted trick, just so I can see the inside of stuff and see what I'm doing. But yeah, it is definitely a little annoying. But you know, ZBrush is a big cheat at the end of the day, because it's technically a 2.5D, which is really interesting. It's kind of where it originates from. I'm trying to find a good cork color, or I can just make this darker. Maybe that will feel more corky. Cool. So now we got this little dude. So we can either, again, none of this has subdivisions, so I can just merge all this down for now, and I can have it be one nice, cool little asset, right? So now that I have this, I can create an insert mesh from it. Oh god, what did I do? Oh, I made my whole character an insert mesh. Look at that. I can save this out for you guys, and then you guys can just draw out a character in ZBrush. He's got teeth and everything. Don't do that. No, I just meant to do one. But if you say create insert multi-mesh, it'll take all your subtools and make something, which is very useful if you're doing that. But I didn't need to make that, so we're just gonna say create insert mesh, and we're gonna do a new one because I don't need that. And now we can go to his belt and can drag these out. Now it will take, it looks like, I thought it would hold on to the colors. Should hold on to the colors. Kind of sad that it didn't. I'm a little disappointed. But anyway, you can see that you can easily drag on these and move them around if you wanted to. I want to keep my colors, so I'm going to be a butt and just choose to grab our whole thing wherever it went in our little pink bottle. Okay. Because it's one little thing and it's not very hard to duplicate and move this around. But it is cool to be able to save it out and be like, yeah, now I have, you know, little bottles. Rotate that and see where we can fit these little guys. Yeah, little character kit, really easy. You can do it with all your characters and then, you know, just like make dragon thing or make a alchemy fox, whatever it may be. Three is always a nice number. Usually rule of thirds or odd numbers, I think, always look a little better than even numbers when it comes to like how much stuff does your character have. It's really more of a design thing or maybe a preference thing. I personally like seeing, you know, odd numbers. I think it's more interesting. And now we can go in and now I can change the color, which is what I really wanted to actually do all along. Come here. We're not gonna, oh, there we go. So we have one that's pink, which is fine. Get rid of this one. One that's like a green, crazy green color. And then maybe we'll have one that's a bluish something. We can adjust where the liquid sits later. For now, I think it's fine to sit like that. Yeah, and then I think on the other side, I think maybe having some sort of cool like holsterish type pouch thing, or like I said, I do want to make something that's kind of, I don't know, there's some really cool tools that, you know, when you look up alchemy, like all these little funky glass bottles are really interesting. This is a really interesting shape. This thing's crazy looking. I don't know why it's shaped like that. There's a reason for it. I just don't know it. Any alchemy people out there, tell me. But yeah, there's tons of really cool, you know, little odd pieces of machinery. This one has a bearded dragon in it, unfortunately. But yeah, really interesting shapes. It's really more about like the colors and shapes. I like that this one has like weird little light bulbs and stuff. I think that's kind of interesting. And like this shape language, I think is kind of cool. Feels kind of steampunky. So again, you know, someone was asking about, am I going to keep the barrel? And it's one of those things where I throw on the barrel because it's when I was drawing at the time. But the more you do reference, the more you do research, the more you'll find like there's going to be something more interesting than what you initially came up with. Your first idea is usually never your best idea, which is why it's really important to do your research and to iterate on top of these things. So I think coming up with something like this, that's like an on-the-go little potion maker thingy, will be kind of cool to add. So I'm thinking, you know, we're going to add a little bandolier of stuff, which actually is really easy to do because I'm going to cheat. And I just have these already made. I think I got these from, I wish I could remember where. I don't know exactly where. But we're going to go ahead and duplicate this dude. We're going to duplicate his body and rehire. I'm going to drag this out. That's really big. We just got a whole bandolier of vials. So we can click through these. Cool. That has something that's, I mean, they're shotgun shells, but we can go in and edit them and make them look like vials if we wanted to. Barrel 2024, best idea. Thank you. Yeah. Hey, if you guys like the barrels, let me know. We'll keep them. But I just think it'd be fun to do something a little different. Cool. So maybe something like that. And again, I'm just going to kind of play with, I only want a few of these. I just want like a few that go across his chest. And then I can adjust the model later. So I can go into my stroke tab. And I can lock these so that way I can start adjusting how this curves around his body. The curve tool is a little funky to get used to, but once you get used to it, you'll learn to love it, I promise. Cool. So now I'm going to go ahead and split that. So now I have that. Ooh, it's bright blue. Lovely. And like I said, I only want like a couple of these. I just kind of drew it out more because, one, that's what the brush does, but two, it does give you some options. So I think it'd be kind of cool to have like a little band of vials maybe right here, right? And maybe this can go down into what will turn into his little packet machine-y thingy, whatever it is that he's using. Maybe lipsticks. Oh, yes. Thank you, Ash Blossom. So yeah, and I'm also, let's get rid of this awful blue and maybe make it like a, maybe like a reddish type leather, something that maybe a little darker. Keeping with our warm toned type assets that we have, except for his glove. So let's auto group this and see if they're all separate. Aha, they are. Hooray! I like that. I like that because I can delete the ones that I don't want. But I can also adjust the geo to be a little lower. So that way it's just a little bit more editable. Because this is, to me, this is 2-bit. This is so many polygons. Like, this is ridiculous. It's just not necessary. So I can go in here and we'll see if I can just have it first. That's kind of, I don't know. Let's see. Let's have it again. It might be doing some funky things. It's doing some funky things. So that's okay. We will now, I'm just going to take this dude. I'm going to split it. Because again, this is just not very editable. That's the issue that I have with this. So I'm going to go in and try to make it a little bit easier to edit for me, which isn't that hard. I'm just going to delete a bunch of these edge loops if it lets me. Oh my god. Ooh, I think it's spiraling. I think that's what's happening here. So spiraling, if you don't know, is when geometry doesn't actually make like a proper edge loop. Hopefully these do. Nope, those don't either. Wow, thanks, asset, for being terrible. That's all right. We can fix it. We'll fix it. But spiraling is basically, yeah, it doesn't have good edge flow, so it just keeps looping around. It's probably because of whatever I did for the ZBrusher. I would imagine this wouldn't have that, or else it couldn't be a little curve tool. So we just have to go in and do it a little more manually, which again, Pick your poison, no pun intended, because we're creating an alchemy character. Ha ha ha, get it? But you know, we drew out this piece of bandolier, which I like. I like the placement of it as well. So for me, I'm like, oh, I don't really mind going in here and you know, deleting these edges, and then I can say group by normals. I can add one edge to it. I can delete hidden, and then I should be able to have this pretty easily. Now I have something a little bit more low res. That's way easier to work with. So now I have this. And this I can tuck under his hood. And again, because it's going to go up and around, and it's probably going to, my idea is that it's going to attach to whatever the tech it is that he makes these potions from. We can just continue adding onto this geometry if we wanted to, which is probably what I'll do. So there's a couple like ways to do that. You could just keep adding edge loops, but I think an easier way would be to duplicate it, rotate it over. Right, so now we have something like that. I'm going to actually flip this way. Bandolier of color swatches, yeah. Well, we're basically going to make, I mean, in there will be a bunch of cool little vials and things like that he, or instead of actually just a bunch of liquid, it could be interesting if he's got like a bottle with like skulls in it, or so it's more, I don't want to say witchcrafty, but you know, it's more interesting if he has like ingredients rather than his potions, right? Because his potions are supposed to be kind of the end result of whatever it is that he's collecting. So maybe on his bandolier, it's stuff that he collects that's going to be, you know, what he uses to put into his little gizmo maker thingy. And then he gets the potions out of that, right? So again, trying to come up with some stories and things that make sense with our character and who our character is and what they're doing. Yeah, a bunch of ingredients that he collected, right? As he's like kind of traveling. I'd love to hear some suggestions from you guys as to what you guys think we could put in there. And what you think could be interesting ingredients for a character. Because also what he collects, you know, if you guys come up with something interesting, will tell you more about his world too, right? So maybe he has something in there that we, as a human, we're like, I don't know what that is, right? Maybe it's some weird creature's head or something like that. Or maybe he keeps bugs that we don't know about that have like little juices that he uses, or little toxins that he uses, right? So we can start kind of fleshing out his world just based on like tiny things that he collects. And I think those types of little details, you know, someone was asking earlier, like how many details is kind of too many? And again, if it adds more interest and your audience can look at it and go, ooh, what's that? And like, why? I think that's always a really cool, interesting detail to add. And I don't think it ever hurts to add types of detail that kind of do things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these guys too. So I'm going to duplicate this and just reusability. I made these little rings when no one was looking. I'm going to bring them down here. Maybe this is also what holds these to his little pouch thing. One ingredient could be a rabbit's foot, pigments, dried herbs, honey pot ants. Yeah, honey pot ants are cool. I would think it'd be cool if you had like some little bugs or something like that in there. I'm gonna get rid of one of these. And again, we can change the size of these now depending on what he's collecting. Or we can make them really thin. We can make them much thinner so that way we can see like what each vial is holding, right? And part of me did this because you're like, oh yeah, this is nice and quick and simple. But now that we know, you know, kind of like what we're looking for and what we want out of our character. Oh my goodness. Where is my gizmo? There we go. Frame up on this. There we go. So I'm going to hide this. So we already have like a vial here, right? But maybe instead of a circular one, maybe you can have different shapes or something like that. So we can easily take this and kind of deform the vial that we already have, which is this dude. I'm going to auto group this so I can just grab the vial. We can flip this for now. I'm going to grab that. I can start deleting some edges. Maybe finding like a really interesting little vial shape. That could be kind of fun, right? One that's got like a little bit of a rounded bottom. I think something like that could be kind of interesting. And then we can take this cork that we already made. Now we have that. Now I'm racking my brain on what I do to, I gotta put these, there we go, that's what I did. Awesome. So now we have this little dude, right? And now we can put a bunch of stuff in it and whatnot. And we can think about what we want to put in it first before, you know, duplicating it and bringing it in there. Let's see if I have something just random in my little drop stuff. I do know that I have like some skulls. Ooh, I have some monster teeth or a foot. I have some horns. Let's see. I could grab like a little horn or something. Like little bat wings or something. What's this look like? Sure. Got no color on it. There we go. So we can put this inside and we can duplicate it around, make it bigger, make it smaller. Right, so I'd come up with a bunch of these and just keep it, you know, in the middle. And then when I'm done, then I can go ahead and bring it up and put it onto his little pouch. I like to keep stuff though. Just looks like gnarled bark now and not really horns, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. Just something that looks cool in there, and you're like, ooh, he's collecting something. They look like maybe they're fingers. Kind of look like fingers too. And again, I think that's kind of what I like. Like, I know it sounds like what I'm saying sometimes is random, but it is, and that's partially what makes it kind of fun. is going, okay, maybe they're horns because I had a horn asset, but then going, oh, they kind of look like fingers, you know? And then if they look like fingers, you're like, oh, maybe it's a type of, you know, bug that he got this from. And now we have something to iterate and create like a bug from or whatever it may be. So I do think like kind of allowing your brain to have fun, be a kid as often as you can, you know, when you're making art, I think is actually a really important tool. Because I think that's where you're going to end up with your weirdest and like kind of fun and most creative ideas most of the time. So yeah, so now we got one. And then I don't think I have any plants, unfortunately, but we can just insert some. I wish I had an octosphere. Or they're like odd little rocks, whatever it could be. Again, like I think a lot of it for now is going to be about finding interesting shapes. So that way, when you look at each bottle, they don't look like they're all the same. They look like they're, you know, collections of a lot of different things. Just gonna make sure that we have some variety. You know, and then again, this could be where it's fun, where we can actually grab like that toy plastic material and we can fill it. We can make these like maybe they're really dark or something, and you're like, ooh, it's kind of like some weird lava rock or something. So I think even, you know, allowing yourself to play with you know, materials and stuff, like what color they are, I think could be really interesting. You know, maybe these things are like a weird like greenish color, you know. So coming up with different stuff like that, I think is really fun, and allowing yourself to be creative and to kind of get some sort of cool story going. I don't want that to be. So I'm going to merge this down. So now I have this little vial. We can duplicate these little vials. And for now, when it comes to, again, this is also, I'll keep bringing up like why I work the way I work, because now I can merge down, and now I have this little vial of potion. And if I need to continue working on this little vial, I can just split it and, you know, merge it down later, or I'll keep one, you know, down at the bottom, but then just keep things as placeholders. So now I can take this. And bring this up here. And we can start putting stuff like where his little bandolier is. Now for me personally, I think I'll just take, I can just grab one of these that has an edge loop that's decent. Question from Twitch is, if this is going to be a character for a video game, how many hours would you work on him normally? It's always a good question. So for my current job, I work on Xenomorphs, and they take about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how complex they want to get with them. And I actually do think doing something like a Xenomorph can take a little less time, because it's not like you have to model a bandolier and a potion and like do all these different things. So it really varies from asset to asset. This character has a lot of stuff on him, so it's one of those things where this might take a little longer just in general, because we have to model and create so much more, because he just has a lot more assets. So, you know, but most time a good average for how long you work on, you know, a high res to a low res to doing UVs and stuff, can be anywhere from 4 weeks to like 2 months sometimes. I know some characters over at like stuff like Apex Legends, you know, they get to work on them for um, a few months, and that's just because like the characters are usually pretty complex with like their assets and everything that they have. So yeah, it'll vary from studio to studio. Just applying some colors here. And then sometimes rotating stuff can be not very pretty in ZBrush when you're just using the move. So I'm going to soften this, doing a soft select, and then I'm going to rotate it that way so I can get kind of a softer select on this. I'm pulling this down a bit more so that way I can allow it to sit and attach to the side of him more properly, and then I can make more adjustments from there. At my studio, do character artists also skin weight their own assets, or is it left for the rigger? It's usually left for the rigger. There's usually a tech artist that does it. I do sometimes really quick and dirty basic ones. So like some really rough ones if our character tech artist is very busy, or if I need to get in something in engine to pose to get a final concept kind of like approved or something like that, then yeah, I can kind of take that matter into my own hands. But the final one is usually done by a tech artist. It's more rare to have it be done by your character artist as well. I am capable of reading, but I do not like reading. I'll let the more professional people do that. Always a good skill to know the pipeline before you and the pipeline after you, because I think it makes you a more valuable artist just in the industry in general. But I do think that, you know, there are way better, obviously, character riggers out there than me and whatnot. But the fact that I know, you know, what her job is at my studio does help me go, okay, you know, if she needs to paint these skin weights and do this, you know, my topology should kind of look like this, or like this type of topology is a pain in the butt to paint skin weights on and things like that. So the more you understand what your coworker's job is, the easier you can make their job, and the happier we'll all be for it. And your coworkers will definitely appreciate you for it, and you'll be a very useful artist for everybody, and a more valued artist as well. So it's important to have us be specific about what you do, but also be curious about what others in your industry or in your studio do as well, and be constantly learning. You know, I always try to make the habit when I can to rig my characters so I can go through the pain that it is to do. So that way, for my job, you know, you just have a better understanding overall of what's required. Just making little things that'll hook in. See, they'll wrap around. At least that's the goal. Cool. I'll bring up the other vial that I have. Which one is it that's merged down? It's this little guy. And we can totally add more here. They can also be different sizes and different shapes and stuff too. So I don't mind maybe these two being the same shape, but maybe the next file that I'll bring up here will be more just like a triangular one, or it's a circular one, or whatever it may be. Just to vary up, you know, if he's traveler and he's collecting these things, you know, maybe he just, why, it's kind of like, you know, at home, do we have all the same pairs of glasses, you know, that we drink from? Probably not. Like, you know, we break some, we have to go buy some new ones. We can't find the ones we like anymore. They're sold out of that kind, or they don't make that kind anymore. Whatever it may be, we always have like a variation of stuff. So I feel like, you know, if you can, it's fun to be able to add, you know, different shapes and different things to your character. Also, I'm going to save again because you never know. So yeah, starting to add that stuff. Cool. Okay, so now I think we have something like that. So we're gonna have a little bandolier that goes around and hooks all these things. I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this over. So I have these little things that'll basically he hooks them on or straps them in to this little thing. And I like this more because then you can see inside of them, right? Ooh, got crazy there. So you can see inside of them, and then you can kind of tell more of a story, right? Maybe you just got real unlucky on one of these, and for the sake of, oh, I didn't mean to duplicate. Hold on. I'm just going to hidden, flip, and then I'm going to now cut this straight across because if liquid was sitting inside of there, that's what it would do. Hidden. I'm going to close off this hole. Close there. I've got another one. Another question is, when you're working on characters, do you think about what the character sounds like or what actor could do the voice for it? Yeah, you can definitely think about stuff like that. I think for film, that's obviously far more common when it comes to not so much what I do as far as character modeling, but when it comes to character concepting, definitely. So, for example, when I was working on Mandalorian, we did a bunch of concepts for different alien prosthetics. So basically, we were trying to fill out the universe of, I think it's when the two, I don't know what their names are. I think it starts with a G. They're like the pig, they're like the green pig race. I think they're called Gorons. I don't know, something like that. We had to populate the fight scene with it because they're like boxing and there's people betting against it and stuff. So I had to concept what different alien races could be there, but you have to keep in mind that we were casting just a bunch of random people who were going to just show up on set the day of. They were going to paint them really quickly and then throw them into the set and start shooting, right? So with stuff like that, you go, okay, you have limited time on what you can paint. You have to paint them 50 different times because there's 50 different actors and there's 50 different people that are on set that need to get this paint job done. You know, so when you're thinking about the practicality of, you know, for film and stuff, you definitely have to keep in mind about who they're casting. Especially when we were working for suits and stuff. So we would usually get the person that's wearing it first, and then we model the suit around the actor. So, for example, for something like Suicide Squad, you get Idris Elba's scan, and then you have to work and make sure that it fits him, right? Because he's the one who's going to wear it later. So it's stuff like that where it's, if you change the actor, that can become extremely problematic later. we did a commercial once for a commercial for Europe that had RoboCop in it, and the actor for the original RoboCop, I'm forgetting his name right now. Someone say it in the chat if you can. He's really small, actually. He's super tiny, which is why he worked for RoboCop, was because they could fit a lot around him to make him and bulk him out more. So that way all these big bulky arms could move, so his robotic arms could move. But for the commercial, they casted a dude who was like 6'5" and just huge, like the absolute opposite of the original actor of RoboCop. So we had to build the RoboCop suit around him, which was way more difficult. Just because when you're dealing with somebody that big, you don't have a lot of leeway with stuff. It's easier to make somebody look bigger. It's really hard to make a big dude fit into stuff properly and make it look proportionally correct. So little things like that when it comes to what's that tail doing right down there? So when it comes to stuff like that, it can become really problematic. And so for film, we have to think about that stuff a lot. Nowadays for games, a lot of people in games are using face scans. You know, Death Stranding has Norman Reedus in it. So when you're modeling and creating that character, you kind of are doing it based off of Norman Reedus, right? So yeah, a lot of the casting sometimes does vary a lot depending on who's getting the role. Someone from YouTube is asking what my favorite 3D software for modeling is, and you're looking at it. It's ZBrush. I love ZBrush. As you can see, I don't. Most of my modeling and stuff when I do character art is actually all in ZBrush, so that includes hard surface modeling. Some people think I'm crazy, and that's totally fine. If you think I'm crazy, that's cool. But I prefer, again, I'm one of those people that I want to stay in one program because I like feeling like it's a creative process, and I don't like feeling like as if it's a technical process. So partly the reason why I stay in ZBrush is just because I don't like exporting and importing and bringing stuff in and out all the time. It just feels too technical and it breaks the creative process for me. And so I will prefer to just stick in one program. But that being said, like ZBrush is a super powerful tool. So it's not like I'm missing out on stuff. But Blender also has great, hard surface modeling tools that I've used before as well. But yeah, just for the way I work, I tend to stay within ZBrush. Because at the end of the day, I feel like when you're modeling very specifically for games or for film, it's really a pick your poison more than anything else, and or pick your favorite drink, I guess. Because they all do very similar things. Some do it slightly better than others. But yeah, there's just a lot of things that ZBrush has to offer that I prefer to use over anything else. So. I'm also, as you can see, I'm a fan of reusing assets. And for me in ZBrush, it's just really easy to duplicate, move around, and create little insert meshes of things. And I don't mind taking the time to do this stuff, and keeping it low always usually tends to work for me pretty well. So I know maybe this process seems like a little slower, but there is going to be a point when you're detailing out your character where you just have to kind of make all the little things, right? So we actually, when you think about it, we haven't made all that much within, the hour and 40 that I've been here. But, we got a decent amount, but that's kind of, if you think about if you're working, 8 hours later, how many assets do you get? And I don't know, for me, I just feel like Blender gets me there pretty quickly. So another question from Twitch. I don't know why I keep wanting to call it Discord. It's probably because it's purple and white. From Ash Blossom. Do I like to work more stylized characters or more realistic ones? I like both, but for my personal work, you know, for doing stuff like this for Archetype, I'll probably be doing stylized stuff because I do so much more realistic stuff in my daytime job, like my real job at my studio. So I personally, when I'm, you know, off the clock, so to speak, I like doing more stylized stuff. I always have. Um, so I like anime and I like cartoon stuff more. I'm a big fan of, you know, like Dragon Ball, and we just, like I said, I just watched Castlevania. I love stuff like Arcane that came out. Alberto Mignello is one of my favorite directors because he's doing a bunch of really cool stuff with animation right now. So I'm a big fan of animation and stylized stuff. So when I have my own time and I'm working on my own stories and working on my own things, I prefer stylized stuff. Synth is asking, have I already tried sculpting in Blender? I have. Blender's great. It's just that when you're used to ZBrush, because I've been using ZBrush for 10 years or 8 years, something like that. It's kind of like going from, you know, I don't know, a Formula One car to like a amateur, like, you know, a 450cc to like 250cc, or, you know, whatever kind of weird analogy you want to throw in there, you know, race car to like kind of normal like road sports car. Like it does the job and it goes fast and it does cool things, but like there's just so many more tools and so many more things that I like about ZBrush's sculpting. Blender in its hard surface modeling is really good. I just don't really prefer it as a sculpting program. But that's because I'm just way too used to ZBrush. So I'm just a little more spoiled in that sense. All right, we are going to try, I don't have that long, but we're going to try to make a thing. I'm going to make a thing, guys. Not so specific for me to say. No, I want to try to make his little, I don't know what it is going to be yet. Some sort of cool, like, canister that, and by the way, like a lot of this, you know, like I'm adding the straps, but maybe I won't connect them completely to like stick. That stuff for me comes a little later where I'm like, oh, how does this come together? You know, maybe I need to add studding or something like that. You know, I added some detail to the little straps, but like how do these straps connect to the belt? That's the more quote unquote like boring stuff to me to focus on in the beginning. So for me, when it comes to blocking out the whole character, I really want to just get you know, all the bigger, more important shapes in first. And you could argue even doing this is maybe a little bit much, but I'm doing it because I've already started repeating and doing that along the in the rest of his design. So I just figured I'd continue to go with it. But I'm going to make some sort of, I don't know, some sort of canister thing here. Somebody else is asking from YouTube, 1453, do you face any migration problem when you try to import your ZBrush model into your game engine? Because I do. No, so I do create, so I'll make the low res and the high res all within ZBrush. And usually I'll use my high res as my low res because, again, I use this creasing method. So if this is my low res game mesh, all I do is crease it and I divide it, and I'm like, this is my high res. So it's literally the same asset. It's just one has subdivisions while the other one doesn't. But I do UV and texture work in Maya. So I'll model everything in ZBrush, and then I'll export that out as an FBX, and then I'll lay out and do my UVing in Maya, because Maya is just the thing that I'm most comfortable with. And then from there, I will bake it in, I actually like baking it in Marmoset, but you can also bake it in Substance Painter. I just prefer the visual folder hierarchy. So we'll probably group that. Hidden smaller. So yeah, so I'll bake it in Marmoset, and then I will texture in substance. You can also use Mari. I know Mari, I haven't used it in a long time because most game assets just don't need the intensity that is Mari. So I haven't used it in a while, but I do like Mari as well. So you can use either one of those. Yeah, someone on Twitch, Ash Blossom, mentioned people are super focused on software, but it's so much more important to learn basic fundamentals like gesture and anatomy. I totally agree. That's why hopefully, I mean, you guys are asking a lot of technical questions, which is totally fine because I am in a technical program. But, you know, when we were first sculpting this guy, I mentioned that the most important thing to me right now when we were sculpting was his silhouette and making sure that all these shapes feel right and feel designed and like purposeful. And because yeah, as much as you know, it's kind of like I'm sure most of you guys have heard of the polishing a turd scenario, right? Where we just get too caught up in the technical and we don't focus more on like the actual artistic why we're doing a thing. And it's super important to make sure that you're maintaining both of those things. And usually, in my own free time, I would rather not learn super technical stuff anymore, and I would rather learn um, and focus on my fundamentals, which is why usually when I'm, you know, doing personal work or doing whatever it is, I like to draw and stuff because I'm in ZBrush and I'm in technical programs all the time. So being able to get away from that and draw on my iPad or draw, you know, in the real world of like pen and paper is a really nice change of pace, and it allows me to stay grounded into you know, what makes a good artist and what gives you like good, interesting character design and stuff. I don't know where my reference went. I think it's still no. I pulled up Steam. Everybody, jump on, play games. I don't have any games. Just kidding. I prefer Barbicette baking. Yeah, I think I get better results with Barbicette. Um, and thank you. Synth mentioned that the fur looks really nice in the preview window. That's all I cared about when sculpting it. Other than that, it's kind of a hot mess, right? But that's okay because to make fur look good just takes time. So it is one of those things that you just got to get time in more than anything else to get your sculpt looking nice. So, but again, if you're polishing a turd, then it doesn't help. So trying to focus on silhouette first, and then um, once you start sculpting details and stuff, all that comes really easily. Then it's just kind of like, you know, turn on your favorite show and just kind of sit and noodle away because you've kind of already blocked out all the good fundamentals of stuff. So we're modeling a little, I'm just blocking in like a little canister type thing. I think what's really going to sell this obviously is adding like a bunch of cool studs and like really big heavy bevels and stuff to this, making it feel fairly industrial. And then later on, probably sculpting in some uh, damage and scuff marks and things like that onto it. I'm picturing it some sort of form of cannister that he can open up. And it would probably make sense if it opened maybe from the top. So he can easily kind of like open it up from the side. So we can do that. Again, I'm a big fan of just reusing what I already have. It's just easier for me. Have I talked about the tail? It looks so good. Thank you. I just talked about it briefly. I talked about how. Oh, hold on. Can't talk and do this at the same time, apparently. Oh my god, it's huge. So I did talk about a lot of it's still pretty rough, but the biggest thing is making sure that the silhouette kind of feels right and the hair is going in the direction that I want it within like the silhouette. So even this, I would still do a lot to change this. So you can kind of push these down more. You can sharpen this up. Some fur I want it to be closer together. I'd be really careful about looking for stuff that feels like it's the same shape over again. So maybe one of these would be a little thicker, right? So I'm really being cautious of things like that. The spacing and the breakup of stuff. How is stuff either? Why is this? Oh, there we go. Either is it going to curl or is it going to curve this way? You know, is this going to curve more and push out like that? Is this going to be longer? Maybe shorter? Does it all come together at the very end? So as I'm going about it, that's kind of the stuff that I'm thinking about. Because then once I have all that in place, then it's just a matter of sitting there and noodling it and doing it. And then I did the same thing with this fur, right? Where I kind of wanted more fur at the top to kind of poof out like this. And then I wanted a bit of a break in the silhouette. And then you can pull these out even more if you wanted to. So you get something kind of more interesting than just, you know, you don't want spike. You know, you don't want it to feel that way. You kind of want it to feel like there's some sort of flow that's happening within your tail. And the hardest part about 3D is like, again, for my concept, I just have to do it once and I'd be like, yeah, shape. And like, it kind of looks like fur. But now I have to really actually make fur. And that's the part about 3D that can be very time consuming. We've got a little handle here now. We can handle it. Oh my god. Wow. Don't tempt me to. So tempted to make dad jokes all the time. Cool. So we've got a little handle. And then I actually think there is a. Where is it? There it is. Yes. For once, I looked at this piece of geo being like, what? What am I gonna do with this? What the hell's the point of this thing? I can never find a reason to use it. But guess what? Now we can, because we're gonna make a little coil. Then I can grab this guy, and I'm going to extrude this very far away. I'm going to do the same to this guy. Oops. I always have a code of puns that I have to beat too. I understand that feeling. So I'm going to have this come. No. I'm looking at my little reference here. This actually would go, maybe this would go into a canister like the back here or something. So I can take this again, build it on top of what you already have. Super, super handy. Give me this. Oh, let's be weird. Give me. There we go. This again, get this again here. I can grab this section. Turn this so I can loop. And I'm just sorry, it's so focused. I'm trying to get this stupid thing. I just want to make sure that this tubing feels correct. That's all. Sorry when I go to extrude it and keep moving it. It's very tiny right now, so it's being obnoxious. So I kind of wanted to go up and then maybe attach. Looks like attached to the top of this thing in my reference, but you know, maybe it can just attach to the side, and I can be happy with that. This is asking, so when I'm coming up with new ideas, what are some of your go-to websites, books to help build a visual library? That's a good question. I do have a ton of art books, just in general, from what I've collected over the years, and I actually don't keep all my art books, and that sounds crazy, but I don't have a lot of space most of the time. So I actually prefer to donate a lot of my art books too, because I'll go through my art books, and if I realize that I'm not really interested in a certain thing anymore, or it doesn't feel like it pertains to what I like anymore, I'll tend to get rid of it. And part of that is also because I'm a big believer in like your limitations is what makes you very good, as far as like being a creative artist. I can come up with interesting things. So for me, like I kind of limit my inspirations so that way I'm constantly searching for new ones. I hope that kind of makes sense. But Pinterest like is a really great source as far as just reference and stuff. I use it all the time for character work just because again you can find tons of really interesting things on there that you probably wouldn't normally run into. I obviously have for art books and stuff, I keep the fundamental stuff. Like I'll never get rid of a Bridgman art book or animal anatomy art books or things like that. But when it comes to, you know, I'm trying to think of one that I got rid of recently that I was like, yeah, just not as, it had to do with concept art that was a little bit for more like realistic, like films and games. But I'm far more into, you know, stylized stuff now than I was before. So I got rid of books that I was like, oh, I'm not really interested in this type of artwork. And it's not that it's bad artwork or that I couldn't learn from it. I just prefer to constantly be looking at stuff that I'm really, really inspired by. I hope that kind of makes sense. But yeah, so my library constantly changes based on what I'm into at the time, which is really fun. So it'll be some sort of copper eventually. True Wizard of ZBrush, thank you. ZBrush Wizard. I've never been called a ZBrush Wizard. I like that. That's a fun term. But yeah, now I can see we've got like, oh, it's 6:01. Guys, you're supposed to not let me go on forever. But as you can see, we have like a lot of really fun little detail that we've added. And it's all these little things that are in my reference, right? Like adding like a little timer, a little watch, and putting all these material breakups over time. That's going to make this piece really come to life. But you can see that we started as a cylinder, but even as I start blocking in smaller shapes or more interesting shapes, like this is supposed to be a separate object technically. So, you know, I don't know how we'll attach it, but we'll make it feel like as if it's going to be something different, right? That it's, you know, concocting in there. And then he pulls it out and he puts it in his little stuff. So again, I think this is far more interesting than like my initial barrel concept, but that's because I went on Pinterest and found something more interesting. And I'm trying to find and add stuff. I'll probably add like a cool little canister below it as well, because that has something to do with whatever the hell this thing is, right? So stuff like that we'll be adding throughout. I will probably be continuing adding that stuff. I don't know how much of it I will do on my stream next Tuesday. Insert more coins. Yeah, trust me. If I could, I would usually just stay here all night talking. But I also have not eaten dinner, so you know, you gotta feed the starving artist here, literally. But yeah, we're gonna continue this next week. My goal next week is to get into a cool pose. I want to do something maybe where he is throwing one of the potions and it's coming out. I have some cool like water, like splash type sculpts that I could do. And we could get it into Blender and render it and have something kind of cool. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you guys will see that I have a water bending crocodile that basically if I'm going to try to mimic a render that kind of looks like that with this character, and I'll do it within Blender. So that's the goal probably next week. So I'll probably bring this guy to a more finished-ish type place, but you guys can kind of see where the process starts and where it will end. Keep you guys posted. And for now, I'm going to peace out. Again, this is Archetype, sponsored by Lenovo. So thank you guys for joining. Hope you guys had fun. And I'll catch you guys next Tuesday. So bye.